For decades, the official line out of Washington on UFOs was, well, it was a masterclass in dismissal.
Total dismissal. Swamp gas, weather balloons.
Right. Nothing to see here, folks. That was the firm, constant line.
It was. I mean, you look at that 2011 White House statement. It just flat out claimed the U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet. That was the public face.
But then you have this culture of secrecy that's so overwhelming it just constantly trips over itself.
Oh, absolutely.
You get President Obama visiting Roswell, of all places, and he jokes to the press, "We will keep our secrets here." It's this profound bipolar reality.
It really is. Public denial on one hand and this constant knowing wink about some deep, deep internal secret on the other.
And that gap, that space between the public story and the internal reality is exactly what we're diving into today.
Yeah, our mission here is, it's ambitious. We're trying to cut through decades of deliberate disinformation, all the denials, the stacks of disputed documents.
To really piece together the verifiable history of the U.S. government's involvement in, well, alleged UFO crash retrievals.
And we're basing this whole deep dive on a report that pulls together witness accounts, official documents, and a breakdown of these high-level programs.
And crucially, the approach here is to use actual named individuals. We're not relying on the anonymous secret witnesses that have, really plagued this whole field for years.
That's essential because the game being played, this acclimatization plan, as some call it, it relies on mixing truth with just sensational fiction.
So the core story gets out there, crash, recovery, bodies, but the proof is designed to fall apart.
Exactly. The source documents are later shown to be hoaxes, so we need to focus on the people, the insiders, who couldn't be hoaxed.
Okay, let's unpack this, and we have to start where the entire modern UFO story really began.
Roswell, New Mexico, 1947.
It's the absolute foundation.
It is. July 8th, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield puts out this press release, and it's startling. They claim they've recovered a flying saucer.
News that just shot across the country instantly.
And almost as fast.
The retraction. Within hours.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's just a simple weather balloon. The cover-up wasn't just quick, it was immediate and almost flawless.
It had to be. If you look at the alleged Eisenhower briefing document, now its authenticity is debated, but the contents.
The content matches so much other testimony.
It does. And it describes a secret recovery operation that actually started a day earlier on July 7th.
So what were the key details from that document?
It says that aerial reconnaissance found the actual crash site. They found the main wreckage, but also about 2 miles away.
The bodies.
4 small human-like beings they apparently ejected. All 4 were dead and badly decomposed. They'd been out there for about a week.
So 4 bodies, wreckage that's immediately split up and sent to different locations. This sets the pattern for the next 70 years.
That's it. Crash, recovery, denial, secrecy.
And that secrecy was challenged pretty quickly, wasn't it? Which leads to one of the most significant early confirmations we have, and it came from Canada.
Surprisingly, yes, from a man named Wilbert B. Smith.
No loss about him.
Smith was a senior radio engineer for the Canadian government. A very technical guy. He was studying the link between geomagnetic energy and these flying saucers.
And by 1950, he'd started a formal Canadian government program.
He did. It was called Project Magnet.
And he uses this legitimate government project to open a line of communication with the U.S. And the response he got was, well, it was extraordinary.
It was jaw-dropping. In September 1950, Smith meets with an American physicist, a Dr. Robert Sarbacker.
And Sarbacker was not some fringe character.
No, not at all. This guy was a deep insider, a science consultant for the U.S. Defense Department's Joint Research and Development Board.
So Smith asks him straight up about the rumors. Did the U.S. recover a saucer and its occupants?
And Sarbacker just confirms it. He says the claims are substantially correct. And even more, he confirms a highly classified group was already studying the whole mystery.
And this is the critical link.
Yeah.
He names the person in charge.
He names Dr. Vannevar Bush as the head of that group.
Vannevar Bush,
Yeah.
the man who basically ran the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
The wartime science czar. What does his involvement tell you?
It tells you this wasn't just classified. It was immediately put under the highest possible authority, the team that built the atomic bomb. This was a critical national security technology problem from day one.
And that sets the tone for everything that follows.
Absolute denial for decades. That moves us to probably the most famous and often dismissed part of the whole secrecy structure.
The Majestic 12 documents.
Right. When that Operation Majestic 12 document was released in 1987, it was an explosion. It outlined Truman setting up this secret group to manage the recovery.
And it introduced that now famous term,
Extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs. It just shows how fast they, industrialized the secret. The occupants became data points.
But the document itself,
Yeah.
it's a huge point of
A
controversy.
massive one.
Critics immediately said it was a fabrication, a clever hoax to muddy the waters. So if the document is fake, how can we rely on anything about MJ-12?
And that's the genius of the disinformation strategy. The document might have been a fabrication, but the existence of the group, that seems much more solid based on other evidence.
What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, start with General James H. Doolittle, a true American hero. The mother of researcher John Lear asked him point blank about MJ-12.
And his reply.
He was extremely cautious. He just said, yes, Moya, there was, but that is all I can say. A quiet, but a really powerful confirmation of the group itself.
And there are other links too, right, to the early scientific investigations.
Correct. Ann Eller, who was Dr. J.A. Hynek's assistant, and Hynek was the consultant for Project Blue Book, she claimed to have seen a list of MJ-12 members in his private files.
Then you have Harold Stewart from the Truman administration, who had a vague recollection of a project to study the remains of a craft.
It all points to the central group,
Ah.
and the key figure linking it all back to that original 1950s R&D structure.
It's Dr. Eric A. Walker.
Exactly. Former president of Penn State and, critically, the executive secretary of that same research and development board that Solbecker had linked to Vannevar Bush.
So it's the same bloodline of the national security elite, just decades later.
It is. And Walker was surprisingly open at first. In 1987, he admitted to researcher William Steinman that he'd attended meetings about the recovery of a saucer and its occupants at Wright-Patterson.
He even said he had notes on it.
Said he had notes he'd have to go find. That's a direct, unambiguous admission from a man at the absolute peak of the U.S. defense science world.
But that openness didn't last.
Not at all. As soon as Steinman pressed him for those notes, Walker just shifted. Total stonewalling. He famously returned one letter with just one line written on it.
Why say anything?
Why say anything? It was a clear message. You're now in an area so restricted that the only way to survive is absolute silence.
And that level of secrecy, it requires a real physical infrastructure, right? Something that goes way beyond just documents.
For sure. The Air Force needed a dedicated retrieval team, and that was Project Moondust, which we know about from a declassified 1961 document.
And its purpose was?
Officially, to locate, recover, and deliver descended foreign space vehicles.
What's so significant about that?
The document explicitly lists unidentified flying objects as a separate category from, say, Soviet hardware. This wasn't just for recovering Sputnik parts.
It was a dedicated retrieval system for something else entirely.
Yeah.
And once you retrieve it, that hardware has to go somewhere special.
Somewhere beyond top secret. Which brings up the famous Blue Room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
The ultimate secret vault. The story about Senator Barry Goldwater is just brilliant.
It really is. Goldwater, a 5-term senator, a major general in the Air Force Reserve, asks his friend, the legendary General Curtis LeMay, if he can see what's in the room.
And LeMay's response?
A definitive, chilling shutdown. He said, hell, no, I can't go, you can't go, and don't ever ask me again.
Just think about that. A 4-star general telling a high-ranking senator he has no access. That means this material was under a classification level that bypasses the entire standard chain of command. It's above Congress.
Exactly. And that insulation was necessary because these materials weren't just being stored, they were being exploited.
And that required the absolute best scientific minds, with money flowing through organizations that are basically invisible to the public.
Which brings us to the world of government think tanks. IDIA, DARPA.
The Jason Group. How do they fit in?
Well, take the Institute for Defense Analyses, IDA. It's a top-tier think tank, exempt from Freedom of Information Act requests. 75% of its work is top secret.
And Dr. Eric Walker
Was chairman of the IDEA board for years. This is where the funding for this kind of deep black research lives, completely immune from public scrutiny.
Then there's DARPA, set up after Sputnik to handle high-risk frontier R&D. That's the logical place to try and back-engineer something that seems physically impossible.
And DARPA uses the Jason Group, an elite team of academic physicists, Nobel laureates included. If the Jasons are involved, it means the UFO problem is being treated as a fundamental physics and weapons challenge.
With the ultimate goal being a strategic military advantage, which leads to the most compelling circumstantial evidence we have.
Stealth technology.
This is where the dots really seem to connect. The theory that the F-117A stealth fighter was developed using concepts from recovered wreckage.
And it isn't just a rumor. There's an early Air Force study, likely from the 48 to 53 period, that explicitly links radar invisibility to the specific shape of a flying saucer or a flying sphere.
Wait, so back in 1948, they knew the shape itself was the key to confusing radar, but the public doesn't see the result for another 40 years.
The shape was the technology. This confirms the secrecy was purely about protecting a strategic technological leap. Even Ben Rich, the head of Lockheed's Skunk Works, who built the stealth fighter.
Officially, he denied using alien tech.
He did. But years later, he wrote to a friend saying he was a believer in both human-made and extraterrestrial UFOs.
So you retrieve the tech, hide it, have a lead scientist duplicate it, and you gain a massive military advantage. That brings us to the most public phase of this whole secrecy game.
The controlled leak, epitomized by Area 51.
Area 51, or Dreamland, goes from completely unknown to world-famous after 1989. And while it was the test site for stealth, the rumors were that it held alien spacecraft.
And the person who cemented that whole narrative was Robert Lazar.
Lazar claimed to be a physicist at a sub-facility called S4, south of Area 51, back engineering 9 alien disks powered by something he called Element 115.
The security paradox with Lazar is just staggering. He's hired for the biggest secret in human history, and he immediately starts talking to researcher John Lear about antimatter reactors.
And when asked why he was talking, he gave that really strange, calculated answer.
I can't tell you anything, I can only answer your questions, which suggests he was either a spectacular security risk or
he was being used. An intentional mouthpiece to get a specific story out.
And the government did its best to discredit him, erasing his records, turning him into a ghost.
But then you have reporter George Knapp, who found corroboration that he worked at Los Alamos. And his W-2 tax form listed the Naval Intelligence Command.
Which supports the claim that the Navy was a major player in this, not just the Air Force, and that Lazar had high-level clearance, even if he was being used.
This brings us right back to the beginning. The idea that this isn't chaos, it's a meticulously managed process.
A controlled disclosure, a limited hangout. That's the theory from guys like former CIA officer Kit Green.
The goal being to release the core story ETs we got the craft and bodies, but release it slowly, over decades to get the public used to the idea.
And the method is to flood the zone, mix profound truth with highly sensational fiction.
The underground bases, hostile aliens, all of it.
All of it. The thousands of pages of sophisticated but fake MJ-12 documents that surfaced in the 90s serve this exact purpose. The core facts get discussed, but the source documents are proven hoaxes. Deniability is maintained.
So if we pull all this together, the key takeaway for you, listening to this, is that the evidence points to 2 constants. First, government denial needed to protect strategic secrets.
And second, the relentless, decades-long pursuit of non-Earth technology by these elite groups like DARPA and the Navy.
And when you look at how they've used disinformation, from discrediting researchers to these sophisticated contradictory leaks, it raises a final, pretty provocative thought.
It does. If this whole process is now being driven by professional psychological operations, then the constant release of spectacular, confusing information isn't a sign of the government losing control. It might be a meticulously calculated plan still being executed. The sources suggest the only way to stop this raging forest fire of new alien tales is full disclosure, but until then, you, simply by engaging with all this, debating Element 115 or the Blue Room, you are potentially part of that very acclimatization plan yourself.